Salam sejahtera, selamat pagi and a very good morning to all of you.
Assalamualaikum to all.
Okay, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all panelists and online attendees to our very first LAM webinar talk series entitled Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia, Facing the Challenges of 2020 as a Legislative Body. My name is Architect Chris Yap, and together with my co-moderator, Architect Rida, we will be hosting the show for today. Next. Our webinar today, ladies and gentlemen, is part of Lembaga Architect Malaysia's involvement in celebrating Hari Profession Technical Negara 2020. Next. Hari Profession Technical Negara 2020, or also known as the National Technical Professions Day 2020, was launched by our Honourable Prime Minister of Malaysia, Yang Amat Berhormat Tan Sri Datuk Haji Muhyiddin bin Haji Muhammad Yassin, on the 5th of December 2020. And it carries with it the hashtag that future is us, hashtag masa depan adalah kita, and hashtag HTPN 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, our host for today on the platform is ARCHIDEX. ARCHIDEX runs a webinar series entitled ARCHIDEX Fast Forward, which focuses on a holistic building industry's point of view. They bring together renowned architecture and building professionals in a collaborative manner to share experiences in the series of their talks. Now, for your information, CPD or Continuing Professional Development points are applicable for this webinar. So please follow the instructions set out in the comments sections to claim the points. Next. COVID-19. Today's topic is set against the background of the year 2020, which is already drawing to an end in about 2 weeks' time. In 2020, the world was hit by COVID-19, which we now know is ranked as one of the worst catastrophe to hit us. It has now lasted approximately 9.5 months since March 18 in Malaysia. Businesses and livelihood changed literally overnight, before most of us could even comprehend its effect, and let alone its impact. For us in Malaysia, there was no exception and escape from these negative impacts of COVID-19, and for the professions legislated under LAM, in particular under Act 117, the Architects Act 1967. Our work methods had to be readapted. Fees, funding, and financial well-beings were affected. Laws and legislative rules had to be re-examined and revised in order for LAM professions to continue to serve the public. So how did LAM react, ladies and gentlemen? How did LAM react, respond, and make proactive concessions and decisions affecting the professions without compromising the interests of the Malaysian public? How does LAM ensure professions under its purview maintain their relevance in society and also among allied professions in the country? Next. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to be able to hear from 5 distinguished members of LAM, or the Board of Architects Malaysia, of the workings of LAMs and its approach in the light of COVID-19. Architect Rida, would you like to do the honors of introducing our distinguished panelists?
Thank you, Architect Chris. Today we have 4 distinguished LAM Board representatives. The first one is Architect Zairul Azidin Badri, the LAM President. Architect Datuk Ezumi Hazani Ismail, the LAM Board Member. Architect Datuk Tan Peying, LAM Board Member. And Architect Dr. Tan Lokman, also a LAM Board Member. Before we call upon the first speaker, participant may ask questions in the comment sections or on Facebook, and do let us know on which speakers is the question directed to. Without further ado, the first panelist is none other than the President of Board of Architects Malaysia, Architect Zairul Azidin Badri. He has been serving with the Public Works Department for 36 years. I welcome the President of Lembaga Architect Malaysia.
Thank you, moderators, Architect Chris and Reda.
Welcome, President.
Yes,
So,
thank
so you'll be giving us an overview of LAM today.
Yes, I will do as swift as I can, because I've been given about 15 minutes or so. I hope I will do the best that I can present. Okay, very good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Morning to members of LAM and also to all participants for the forum this morning. Hope everyone is in good health and safe at home or in your workplace. Okay, the topic for this morning forum, as mentioned by moderator, is facing challenges of 2020 as a legislative body. So what is LAM or Board of Architects doing about it? So for a start, let me ask a question. What is the difference between now and before MCO in practice? So with that, LAM had done a survey among members since the MCO has reached a period of 9 months plus now. So basically what the survey have found out is that we are now having about 2,307 registered professional architects. We have on board also architecture graduate about 2,444. We have a registered building draftsman 128, interior designer 568, IOW 130, and architectural technologies for now is only 20. So we hope the number of members registered, as I mentioned, should be maintained till the next year. We want to see the same number or there will be increase in number, although we are now having this pandemic with us. So we are also, from the survey, we discover that the work from home concept is now the new norm. So from the survey, it was discovered that about 30 to 35% of the staff is working from home. So there is a good evidence that the increased use of digital-based and IT office equipment in order to continue business or the operation of the day. So basically, for today, my presentation will cover 4 main topics. Firstly, profession regulated by Architects Act 1967. And what is the composition of the board member in Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia? An overview of the challenges during pandemic COVID-19, where I will cover relating to practice, registered person, and the architectural education direction. And finally, in conclusion, the Board of Architect concession. Okay, let me reintroduce LAM, refresh everyone of its function. Basically, LAM take care and regulate the practitioner and the architectural education program. Architects Act 1937 or Act 117 covers 5 professions under its purview. The Board of Architect Malaysia or LAM is a statutory authority responsible for the enforcement of the Architect Act 1967. So the main function of the board are provided under Section 4.1 of the Act. So namely, registration of architects, graduate architects, interior designer, building draftsman, inspector of work, and architectural technologies. So LAM also register architectural and interior design consultancy practices. Besides registration, LAM also regulate the members' conduct and ethics, conducting examinations for admission to the profession. We do accreditation on architectural program for all architectural education providers. And last and not least, LAM also doing development and promotion of the profession, and also representing the architectural profession in any matter of local and international levels. So who are in the Board of Architect, or who are running the Board of Architect to make sure that the function are well done? So roughly, the composition of the boards of Malaysia, of Architect Malaysia, is basically you have one president, which is appointed among architects. we have 5 architects from the public sector. We have 10 architects from the private sector, where 3 are appointed through PAM. 5 representatives from various professional bodies, namely engineers, quantity surveyors, registered building draftsmen, interior design, IOW, and architectural technologies. So in total, we have 22 members that make sure that the board function well according to the Architects Act. So day-to-day running of the board is by a executive secretary administered by the registrar. So let's get into the real business and on practice now. I'm just giving an overview of situations of what is happening, where details might be elaborated later by the other panelists in their own field. So LAM is aware of the many difficulties faced by practice and also by members. So in general, it's always been made known that it's difficult now to collect fee. There is no face-to-face meeting anymore. Staff are not with us. They are some working from home. And there is also difficulties to do business. Example, doing submission through counter is no more the same. Some are done by appointment. And this makes us difficult to get the timely in terms of the process. So at the same time, there were no job, no tender, no new tender. Disruption to work processes, like going to site. There's so many new SOP to be adhered, and supervision may be different now. So these are the many difficulties that the members are facing. LAM is aware that a lot of our registered members are facing issues which are related to the contractual performance, fees, and funding in their discharge of duty as a professional during the many stages of MCO. LAM, with his friendly societies, PAM and ACAM, outreach to the government through engagement with EAC, with MITI, Ministry of Finance, and Infrastructure Cluster Minister to propose and give our recommendations for SOPs and COVID bill. Without going in details, LAM responded promptly on issues raised like extension of time, continuity of services, and the rights of architects, interior designers, and building draftsmen. We keep our registered professional informed of their obligation in accordance to the Act 117, so that they feel assured they are doing the job professionally and continue with the project at hand swiftly. The outcome of the engagement with EAC and the Infrastructure Cluster Minister is the temporary measure for reducing the impact of Coronavirus Disease 2019 Act, where it was tabled and approved in the Parliament recently. Series of discussion at length in the board, resulting LAM providing its feedback and recommendations. SOPs and work rules and regulation imposed by MITI had the input from LAM. On the other hand, another aspect of practice, LAM also noticed an increased number of misrepresentation during this challenging time, both from local as well as overseas impersonators who are not registered with the board, depriving and threatening our professionals of their works and livelihood. Rampant advertisement offering especially architectural interior design services by these people are being addressed by our surveillance and enforcement committee in Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia, although this is a lengthy process and our registered professionals are up in arms on this issue. Act 117 has provision as to how we can deal with such matter, and rest assured that Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia is committed to act on this complaint. LAM have identified few cases for a start of architecture and interior design impersonating or service offered by unregistered person, where the AGC, through the Judicial Training Center and the police, giving the support and the assistance and to LAM for our legal action in court in the near future. Our education ground, on the education ground. Next, okay. On the education ground, learning and teaching of architecture have changed. The sudden restraint imposed into face-to-face and mass attendances of class, courses, and exchange of presentation have given rise to a completely new set of conditions under which our future professions are trained and recognized. Peer learning and gathering in studios to churn and criticize design output in the design development process and tracking the design evolution is difficult to experience anymore, and is no more the same. All this is due to no more face-to-face studio activities, where every process is now online. On this note, LAM via its Majlis Akreditasi Pengajian Seni Bina Malaysia or MAPS has revised its acceptance level of delivery by architecture education provider, adjusting to online communication and log-on credit hours, all to overcome the limitations brought about by the pandemic. To date, LAM had issued a 4 advisory note, where it was issued in stages starting from April till August this year, as a guidance to the education fraternity to organize the new normal of teaching and learning environment during MCO. For example, for Notice 1, LAM has guided the AEP or the education providers about initiative for prevention and of its impact to the institution. Notice 2 later was also issued to elaborate the teaching and learning and evaluation process that AEP or IDEP should do. Notice 3 is relating to accreditation application during MCO by AEP and IDEP. And last and not least, Notice 4 is on teaching and learning for design studio guide, where face-to-face is recommended for year 1 of the BSc program and a final year for master program. In terms of new initiative, Council of Examination Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia has started with the interior design for the first online assessment of the candidate taking the interior design by integrated design project, after conducting 2 briefings online. Follow through with that, the architectural assessment will follow suit after doing a bit of review on the aspect of assessment process. So there are many things that the board is doing under the fraternity, education fraternity for now. So next, in consideration of difficulties in traveling and in observance of SOPs in place by MKN, LAM has also made certain decisions. So Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia has totally gave waiver on the need for continuous professional development CPD points for architects and building draftsmen on the 16th of November this year. So at the same time, Lembaga has delayed the imposition of CPD points for the interior designer till next year. We were planning earlier to launch it this year, but we are going to defer it to next year. Third, on the same note, LAM has also made a decision to give a 50% rebate for the subscription fees for all category and types of its registered members, individual and company level. Although this is a hefty decision taken by LAM financially, but we believe our registered member need and the applied comforts for us in Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia. So as in conclusion, LAM is always alert, aware, and continuously taking the necessary action for the need of the profession and the architectural education fraternity. LAM will want the number of members registered to be maintained as what the number now or increase, and require members to explore and venture into new ways of practice, relevant and acceptably competitive to new potential clients and align with the government needs. For the education fraternity, the new methodology to run program should meet the minimum requirement set by MAPS of Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia by not compromising the quality of student output. LAM is committed, again, in collaboration with Ministry of Higher Education, to produce the new blueprint of architectural education direction till 2030, which is targeted to be completed by mid-2021. So I hope I've covered some of the overview of what LAM is doing now during the pandemic. We hope we can discuss further in the later session. So with this, I end my presentation and thank you. I pass over back to the moderator. Chris.
Thank you very much, President Architect Zairo. That was a very insightful presentation covering most aspects of what LAM has been doing. I think it's very important because a lot of the work are done in the back room, meetings are attended, and I'm glad you had this opportunity to let the audience know of the bedroom work, so to call, that LAM is championing and pushing ahead for the professions under its legislation. Thank you very much once again, President. We'll get back to you later on.
Yes,
Architect Rida, would you like to go ahead?
Okay, indeed, Architect Chris, LAM has been very sensitive and alert to the current situation. Okay, now we move on to the second panelist. We have none other than Architect Datuk Tan Pei Ying. She's the principal of PI Architects and been practicing since 1985. She's currently the board member, spearheading as chair of the LAM Practice Committee. She's also a recipient of the LAM President Medal. I welcome President Datuk Tan Pei Ying. Okay, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Rida. Unfortunately, Datuk Tan Pei Ying has had to attend a very urgent meeting this morning in Putrajaya. She will try to join us for the Q&A session. She's trying her best to rush back. But Pei Ying being Pei Ying, she has already prepared a slide in anticipation. And we will ask the host to play her slide and video while taking her place.
All right.
Architects, would you mind?
Hi. Today, I'm going to briefly discuss on the impact of COVID-19 on LAM as a legislative body and on our members and the practice. LAM has conducted a survey with the members in May 2020 during the MCO period on the impact of COVID-19 measures on the architecture and interior design services. Although the survey is more than half a year ago, the COVID-19 pandemic has not gone away, and most of the statistics will still be applicable. "490 practices and individuals participated in the survey. Almost 70% of the respondents are from small and micro practices. The survey results indicated that almost all the respondents' cash flows are affected, and more than half are severely impacted and found it difficult to keep up with the business expenses. Only 1% was not affected. 11 respondents reported that they have closed down. Many practices have made adjustments to overcome cash flow problem by reducing overhead expenses, cutting salaries and or allowances, and some even reduce the number of employees. Only around 6% survived without making any adjustment. Key complaints on the SOPs imposed by the government were on the frequent changes and the cost of compliance. Most of the respondents also complained on the health screening availability. Main issues faced by practices were related to disruption of services provided by authorities and disruptions in the construction works due to shortage of workers, materials and equipment, and this have affected the productivity along the entire value chain. More than half of the respondents also indicated that the projects have been disrupted by the client's decision to cut budget. Now let us look at the impact of COVID-19 on Architects Acts and Rules and architectural profession and the key challenges, and also the provision under Part 2 and Part 11 of the COVID-19 Act. Most parts of the Architects Act and Rules are not affected by COVID-19, as LAM has the power to vary certain obligations and requirements, such as the following. Reduction of subscription, as what the President has said, we are reducing the subscription by 50% for the year 2021. Waiver of CBD points, complete waiver for the year 2020, and all the matters pertaining to registration. The following are the various sections of the Architects Act affected by COVID-19. Section 7A4 on architectural consultancy practice, on notification on the type of architectural consultancy practice. Section 7B3, period to comply on the shareholding requirement. And then Section 8.1, minimum period of residency in Malaysia to be entitled to submit plans and drawings. Section 10.3 on minimum period of residency in Malaysia prior to the date of application for registration as a graduate architect or architect. Then Section 10A2 on period of physical presence for considerations of registration of foreign architects. Section 10A4 on period for appeal to the minister upon receiving notifications of rejections from the board. Section 16 on failure to renew the registration within the period from the expiry of the registration, and Section 18 on the period to return certificates of registration of architects. Section 28 is on the period to appeal to the appeal board upon being notified on the refusal or removal on registration. There are two key schedules under Architects Rules affected by COVID-19, which will affect the members. Conditions of engagement of an architect and memorandum of agreement between the client and the architect. Sub-Rule 7.1 of the Conditions of Engagement is a period required for the architect to obtain the written agreement of the client in respect of his remuneration for architectural consultancy services. Then Rule 10 stipulates the architect's responsibility to keep the client updated of any material changes in the estimate of the cost and the time for the project. And this would definitely be affected by the COVID-19 measures. Rule 14 requires the client to give decisions within a reasonable time. And Rule 15 requires the client to pay all fees or charges in connection with submissions within a reasonable time. And again, this will be affected by the COVID-19 measures. Sub-Rule 16.1 allows the architect to suspend his service if the client fails to pay the fees within the stipulated period. And again, this period will be affected by COVID-19. Sub-Rule 17.1 stipulates the period in which the notice of termination shall take effect, and Rule 18 requires the architect to submit his account for the balance of fees due from the date of termination of the Memorandum of Agreement. Again, this will be affected by COVID-19. Rule 24 is on the notice of arbitration and the period to appoint arbitrator from the date of notice. All this will also be affected. Under the Memorandum of Agreement between the client and the architect, the interval of payment and period of payment as agreed will definitely be affected by the COVID-19 measures, especially during the MCO period. Many questions have been raised by our members. Are ACPs entitled to claim for additional fees due to COVID-19 pandemic? Under Rule 14 of the SMOF, ACPs are entitled to claim for additional fees due to exceptional negotiations and protected involvement services due to delay caused by COVID-19 measures. However, all the stakeholders in the construction industry are affected, some more than others. As such, the question remains, should we claim? The following are the key challenges encountered by the practices due to the COVID: financial hardship, additional costs of doing business, disruption in the supply chain affecting all stakeholders, loss of productivity and efficiency, project disruption and delay, project being suspended and or cancelled or change of design brief, problem related to authority liaisons, submissions and approval of plans, the whole CCC process, project coordination, which become less effective without physical presence, set activities including inspection, difficulty in project and contract administration, and also management of contractual dispute due to the lack of provision in the contract to deal with unprecedented pandemic. We wish to remind that regardless of the COVID-19 pandemic, architects, interior designers, and registered building draftsmen are still required to abide to the following 4 principles as stipulated in the Code of Conduct. Number 1, compliance with the Architects Acts and Rules. Number 2, faithful discharge of duties and obligation. Number 3, professional integrity. And lastly, respect for the legitimate rights and interests of others. We should not use the pandemic as an excuse for not discharging our responsibility professionally and fairly. The following are the areas that require special attention based on the number of complaints and queries LAM received: premature stage certifications under SPA, CCC issued not in compliance with UVBL, quality of work, excessive defects, letter of release, dispute of fees, and dispute on the quality of professional services rendered. Now I'm going to talk about the COVID-19 Act. The long-anticipated Act has finally been published on the 23rd of October 2020. Most of the industry stakeholders are of the opinion it came a little bit too late. Anyway, it's better late than never. I will go through the portion of the Act that deals with construction sector, which is under Part 2 and Part 11. Part 2 is on the inability to perform contractual obligation. There are only 6 sections under Part 2 of the Act, from Section 5 to Section 10. Construction contract and professional services contract are included under Item 1 and 3 of the schedule under Section 7. Section 5 stipulates that Part 2 of the Act is deemed to have come into operation on 18 March and will expire on the 31st of December 2020. Section 6 is interpretation, and basically it says that the minister shall mean the minister charged with responsibility of law. Section 7 is on inability to perform contractual obligation, and under the schedule, as highlighted earlier, construction contracts and professional services contract are included under Item 1 and 3 of the schedule. This section also specifies that the inability to perform the contractual obligation must be due to COVID-19 measures to control or prevent the spread of COVID-19, and the contracting parties shall not exercise their respective rights under the contract during the said period. The Act only provides a temporary suspension of rights of the parties for a limited period, which is from 18 March to 31st December, unless further extended by the minister. It is not a waiver, and it is also not an automatic EOT of 9.5 months. Section 8 is on the power of the minister to amend the schedule, and Section 9, any dispute referred to COVID-19 measures may be settled by way of mediation. Please note that this is a may provision and it is not compulsory. And the mediation process may be determined by the minister, and upon conclusion, the parties shall then enter into a settlement agreement in writing, and the settlement agreement shall be binding. Section 10 is on saving provision. It stipulates that actions taken by the contracting parties during the period from 18 March until the date of the publication of this Act which is on the 23rd of October, shall be deemed to have been validly carried out. I wish to reiterate that Part 2 of the COVID-19 Act only applies for disruption of contract due to COVID-19 measures. As such, the rights of the contractual parties remain intact if the breach is not due to COVID-19. With the saving provisions, even if the breach is due to COVID-19, any actions taken prior to 23rd October 2020 are still considered valid. Now let's move on to Part 11 of the COVID-19 Act, which is on the modification to the Housing Development Control and Licensing Act 1966. There are altogether 7 sections from Section 32 to 38. Section 32 is the commencement of the modification to the HDA and deemed to have come into operation also on the 18th March 2020. Section 33 is on interpretation. The agreement basically means the SPA under Schedule G, H, I, and J of the Housing Development Regulations entered before 18 March 2020. Section 34 is on late payment of charges, which does not really concern us. Section 35, the period from 18 March to 31st August 2020 shall be excluded from the calculation of the time for delivery of vacant possession and the liquidated damages for failure of the developer to deliver vacant possession. But the developer can apply to the Minister for an extension, and the Minister has the right to extend until 31st of December 2020. So under Section 36, the period from, again, same period, 18 March to 31st August, shall be excluded from the calculation of the defects liability period after the date the purchaser has taken BP and the time for the developer to carry out the repair works and make good the defects. So purchaser can also apply to the Minister for an extension, and the Minister can also grant until 31st December 2020. This has direct impact on the architects, as we are required to certify the completion of the defects in which notice has been served by the purchaser under the SPA. So Section 37 on saving, which is quite similar to the Section 10, and Section 33 is modification to Section 16, and this is relating to the claim to housing tribunal. So what are the key issues? The COVID-19 has lesser impact on the professional services contract as compared to the construction contract. The following are some of the issues. Although PAM 206 and 2018 contract have specific provisions for EOT to be granted for force majeure, the conditions of the contract are not comprehensive enough to ensure equitable distributions of risk and responsibility caused by a pandemic of this nature and scale. It is totally unexpected. There's also no provision to extend the time frame for the various parties to perform their respective obligations for many parts of the contract. It is important to note that COVID-19 measures cover not just the MCO period, but also CMCO, RMCO, EMCO, and the SOPs imposed to control and prevent the spread of COVID-19. While there seems to be some consensus regarding EOT during the initial MCO period, the EOTs to be granted for the delay caused by the subsequent COVID-19 measures are a lot more complicated and depend basically on the specific conditions affecting the projects and the contract provisions. All the SOPs imposed by the government and authorities definitely will affect the productivity that resulted in delays and increased costs on the projects, which have implication on all the stakeholders along the value chain. So, while there's also extension of DLP to purchasers under SPA, there's no corresponding extension of DLP for contractors for most of the construction contracts. And if we go strictly according to the current contract provisions, we may be contributing to incomplete projects and insolvent contractors, as they are the parties most affected. It is clear that the COVID-19 Act will not be able to resolve all the disputes and the issues that the building industry is facing, and disputes are definitely expected. The mediation process to resolve contractual disputes would be lengthy, costly, and consuming. So recognizing that COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented and that has caused major disruption, the industry stakeholders have decided to work together to address these concerns. Many seminars, dialogues, discussions were being held. The intention is to encourage all contracting parties to approach all ongoing projects with a fresh mindset by looking at how best to preserve each party's interest as opposed to insisting on strict contractual rights. The key recommendation arising from the BIPC is consultants are encouraged to play facilitative roles in helping the contracting parties to explore options they will seek to balance their respective interests to ensure the sustainability of all stakeholders and the building industry as a whole. So we, as contract administrators, are now expected to step in and take on the more proactive and key roles to mediate and to mitigate the conflict in order to minimize the impact on the ongoing projects for the benefit of all parties. I would also like to share with you the recent development in Singapore, which could serve as a very good reference and guide for us. Singapore government has just passed an amendment to their COVID-19 bill on 2nd November 2020, which just came into effect at the end of November 2020. There are two main reliefs that have been introduced for the construction sector. The first one is to provide an automatic universal extension of time of 4 months, 122 days. And this applies to both public and private sectors. This would therefore give the contracting parties more breathing space, allow consistency of treatment across all affected construction contracts, and provide certainty and assurance to the industry as they restart their projects. Contractors who wish to seek a longer extension can negotiate with the developers or rely on their existing contract provisions. They could also serve a notifications of relief to seek defense from LD. The second relief is to require the co-sharing of additional non-manpower related costs, named as qualifying costs, between the contracting parties for projects under both public and private sectors. The co-sharing percentage is 50% of the qualifying costs by the contracting parties, but subject to a monthly cap of 0.2% of the contract sum per month and up to a total 1.8% of the contract sum until 31st March 2021. In the event there's any dispute, an adjudication application could be made with the building construction authorities. These relief measures are to provide more support and to ensure that no stakeholders bears an undue share of the burden caused by the pandemic and minimize the downstream contracts going under. That could in turn knock-on impact on the entire value chain. Singapore COVID-19 bill has much clearer provisions to deal with EOT and the co-sharing of the costs, which our COVID-19 Part 2 of the Act lacks. These are the clauses that we have identified under PAM 2018 form of contract. They are affected by the COVID-19 measures. As this is covered under a separate seminar, I will not elaborate on the details. However, you can see from the list on the extent of the impact. Look at all the clauses that are affected. PAM has also prepared and submitted recommendations to be considered for construction contract administration to the Building Industry President's Council. These recommendations have yet to be discussed and agreed upon. In view that these are also covered under separate seminars, I will also not go through the details of the recommendation, but the key recommendations will be covering EOT, loss and expense, defects liability period, and all the contract obligations that have time implications and other measures and the way forward. This is indeed an unprecedented pandemic that affects all of us. We need to work together and stand united on this so that we could mitigate the impact collectively. So let us all work together to make a difference. Thank you and stay safe.
Wow, okay. Thank you very much, Architect Dr. Tam Pei Ying. That was a very detailed presentation, bringing us through the various forms of contracts, outlining the responsibilities of consultants as well as clients, and touching a bit about the comparison of the various COVID acts in other countries. Thank you very much again, Dr. Tam Pei Ying. And just like to inform the audience that Dr. Tam Pei Ying will certainly join us for the Q&A session, so you can key in your questions. Okay, Architect Rida, would you like to introduce the next panelist?
All right, thank you, Architect Chris. Okay, the third panelist is none other than Datuk Architect Izumi Hazani Ismail. He's currently a LAM Board member and the president of PAM. He practiced his architecture at Arkitek MAA Sdn Bhd, having 25 years of experience. I welcome Architect Izumi Hazani.
Okay, hello everyone. Assalamualaikum and good morning.
Morning, Datuk.
We're like 7-8 minutes to noon. Okay, thank you, Architect Chris and also Architect Arianta. Architect Rida. You are always like twin, Arianta and Rida.
Okay, Datuk. Let's bring us through. Yeah.
Shall I start with my slide presentation now?
Please do, Datuk.
Okay, I hope you can see the screen. So the topic that we are going to discuss today is about COVID-19 and how it impacts the practice of architecture. But today I try to change the topic a little bit. So I'm going to talk about architecture and technology, but not how COVID actually impacted the practice of architecture and technology, but how actually we can take this opportunity to adopt technology in our practice. Okay, so generally technology, as everybody are aware that advances in technology have been disrupting conventional business models. So we all know about the Industrial Revolution 4.0 and IoT, virtual reality, and the use of AI in many industries, including construction industries. I don't want to go very detailed because I have a limited time here. And globalization also play a very significant role in how that affect the practice of architecture today. If you look at how the business has been going on, it's like there's no more border. You can order something online and then the product can be delivered from any part of the world. So logistics is very important, but how this will affect architecture? Today, with IoT, we can provide architecture services in any part of the world without physically being there, especially when we are dealing with the design part of it at the beginning stage of implementation of any project. So the technology is always there, and it's just that now under this pandemic, the pandemic COVID-19 actually accelerate the process of adopting of the technologies. So we know that using these technologies, many old business model. In my previous talk, I give an example: the taxi drivers. Previously, the taxi drivers are the one that provide public services, but using the IoT and also big data, Grab has now came to the picture, and actually Grab and Uber, all this ride-hailing actually has marginalized the conventional taxi drivers. So what are going to happen in the future works? So we are now start working into a virtual environment. You can have cloud office, virtual office. Similarly, what we are having now, this is a virtual seminar. We call it a webinar. So this is an evidence that this is going to be the future direction of the way that we are doing business. So in the old model of architecture business, we always want to do everything. As architects, we want to take the lead. We want to do the detail design, construction. Even some of the very passionate architects, they go to the site and they also do the bricklaying as well. Traditionally, that was how the architect actually got into the position. But in this new world, I think we have to unbundle all those jobs. So other than we are doing everything, maybe we start to focus on certain niche, certain scale, and to be specialized in certain things. So this is how that we have to transform the future business. Okay, so this is an example how actually the adoption of technology through digitalization and automation. So this example where actually building information modeling technology actually being used to fabricate using robotic, using the automation to construct the building components, the panels, even volumetric component, and then this component can be installed and assembled at the actual site. So according to CIDB, the future of construction is going to be like a manufacturing. So all the building component or most of the building component will be prefabricated at the factory. So we need to take into the advantage of this technology. And of course, okay, to be excellent in adopting the IBS and also modular system, we must be familiar with BIM. So the reason why I talk about BIM and technology today, because there is a very significant relation between BIM and technology, construction technology. The key to modernization of construction is BIM and also IBS. But for this case today, for this talk today, I'm going to focus on BIM, but not so much, not very detailed. This just, I think everybody are aware that BIM actually can be used not just in architecture, even facility management, cost management, site management, and many other things, including visualization, presentation, planning for precasting for the building component and so on. And in BIM, there are many levels, a level of details. Depending on how do you want to do it, maybe at the beginning of the conceptualization, maybe the level of details only up to level 100, where actually you can have some idea how the design, the design and also concept of the building can be finalized. And of course, there are many details even up to post construction for facility management and so on. And where are we now? And what are we going to expect? Generally, what's been practiced in our country today, we are at the early stage of BIM. Some of the practices or some of the group of consultants actually they already start up to level 300 of the for the design development. Okay, so if you can see on the screen, LOD 100 is basically the concept. Okay, and then schematic design up to LOD 200, and all LOD 300 is a little bit more detailed. Actually, at LOD 300, the model, the BIM model actually can be constructed already. So, but we are still far away from LOD 400 and 500, where actually it can be used for fabrication. Either it is site construction or fabrication, prefabrication at the factory. Same goes to LOD 500. There are still very few consultants, architects, or engineers actually has gone up to LOD 400 and 500. So, okay, in terms of users, a group of users, the user for BIM can be the contributors, consultants, coordinators. So there are 4 types of user domain. The main one actually is model contents creators, and then the model contents manager or management, and then viewing and reporting and system administration. So basically, they all have all these function depending on what requirement of that domain for building material supplier. So there are model contents creation. They create the model so that the user, the designer can use the model and then to plug into the design, the BIM model. Okay, so these are all the users. Okay, so there are many types of BIM. Okay, so in current situation, I think this is the time that we need to start using the connected BIM. Connected BIM is that means that the model actually in the cloud, so everybody can access the model virtually and can work together. So at the same time, the architects, engineer, everybody can build the model virtually because the model actually is stored in the cloud. So there are a lot of advantage using a connected BIM. So in terms of sharing the library and to access all the model, so make it easier for collaboration and so on. So these are all the character of connected BIM. Is different from standalone, where actually you have the model in your office and you are working together among the collaborators inside your office. So connected BIM means that everybody from anywhere in the world actually can access the model and work together. So what are the game changer in digitalization in terms of adoption of BIM? So the initiator or even the policy maker in the company must have vision how to transform, how to digitalize the company. So the company that alters its business strategy and conceive an entirely new business plan. So these are the game changer. Okay, and what I want to share with you also the BIM benefits. I think it will eliminate discrepancy early, even before going into construction site. A clash analysis can be done, early problem detection, better cost control, better time control, and a proper record on the changes and the updating of information, even up to the record for maintenance schedule. Okay, this is a very important map that I want to share with you. If you notice that this is the map in terms of level of BIM adoption all over the world. So the green one means that the most stringent or most advanced in terms of BIM implementation. If you look at here, the green shows that open BIM standards and mandate. So here on the screen, you can see that country like Norway, Austria, they have already implemented to that level. And we have a lot of other developed countries actually mandated the use of BIM. Our neighbor here, Singapore, you can see that starting from since 2015, they make it mandatory for building more than 5,000 square meter to be implemented using BIM. But you cannot see Malaysia anywhere on this map because we have not make it mandatory yet at the moment. We are starting to implement it as a mandatory, but it has not been the regulation yet at the moment. And of course, you can see that there are many other countries, okay, even some of the European countries like Belgium, they are still at the early planning stage of BIM adoption, including Switzerland, Italy, Czech Republic, New Zealand, and also Brazil. So I think, I hope that with more understanding that the level of adoption of BIM in our country can be improved. So under the Architects Act, there's now a provision for architecture technologies. So we need more people to do BIM, and BIM, the right person actually to be involved with BIM is a person who understand the BIM technology. And it is very good if we can encourage more architects or even graduate architects, okay, to be specialized, to be a specialist in BIM. not just in terms of BIM modeling, but in terms of BIM management. I think the key word in BIM implementation, it is not the modeling part, but management. How do you manage the model? How do you manage the information? So this is where actually the board of architects like to encourage more architects to come and register with the board as the architecture technologies. So how is the process to register as technologies? So the criteria for architecture technologies registration, first, any candidate or any person graduated from a recognized Bachelor of Science Architecture or any other program recognized by the board as equivalent to LAM Part 1 qualification. So it means that any graduates who already got the Part 1 or has done a similar program, although that it is not recognized by the board as Part 1, but the program is equivalent, then they can register. So any graduate from Bachelor of Architecture Technology or Bachelor of Science Architecture or any other program recognized by the board, and the candidate complies with the following requirement. If the graduate actually already obtained Part 1 qualification, they can automatically register as the architecture technologies. But if the graduate actually come from the schools or the architecture program which is not recognized by the board, then they still can register, provided they need to obtain a minimum of 2 years practical experience as prescribed by the board and pass examination as may be determined by the board. So this examination actually just an interview. It is like 2 or 3 panels of interviewers. We sit down together with you to interview. So if you pass, then you are entitled to be registered as architecture technologies. And under architecture technologies, there is a provision for you to be a architecture technologies with specialization registration. So after being architecture technologies for minimum period of 2 years, and if you comply with B or C, then you are entitled to be a specialist, architecture technologies with specialization registration. So you must have one of these, okay? Has obtained a minimum of 2 years relevant work experience as architecture technologies in the area of specialization as prescribed by the board, or has obtained a minimum of 2 years work experience in any area as architecture technologies and undergo accepted top-up or specialization courses in the area of specialization. So what are the category of work or scope of work that can be done by architecture technologies? So the architecture technologies, they can either establish their own company, or they can also work under the supervision of other architects. The first one, the type of work that architecture technologies can do independently. This one is including if they want to be specialized in acoustic design, accessibility science, architecture facade technology, architecture lighting technology, building information modeling. This one is the one that I highlighted just now on BIM, building information modeling, or building material component design, conservation technology, construction technology, dilapidation survey, environmental technology, fire safety science, IBS, and also measure drawing. So they can operate independently, mean that if they want to establish a company, they register as architecture technologies. They register as architecture technologies. After that, if they want to set up a company to say that I am providing a BIM service, building information modeling service. They can do that. Although that they can, of course, they cannot, without registration as architect, they cannot offer architecture service, but they can offer the specialized service as listed under category A, work independently, so that they can provide that service. And the other one is that, okay, to provide technical assistance. So if they want to do architecture drafting or they want to do building design, they can also do this. But this one, they must provide the service under the supervision of professional architects. So it means that if they work under a professional architect, yes, okay, they can be architecture technologists who provide this to professional architects, but not independently to set up a firm to offer the service of building design. Okay, and of course, the rest of the activities in column A can also be provided as a technical assistant under the professional architect. And to maintain the registration, similar to the architects and graduate architect, they must collect the CPD, or in this case, we call it a CTD, Continuing Technical Development point. They must collect the CTD points. So minimum 5 CTD points for architecture technologies every year before the renewal of registration, and minimum 10 point of CTD points for architecture technologies with specialization. There's one thing which is very important for those graduates who came from the school which are not recognized by LAM. They can register as architecture technologies, and if they follow through the process, okay, with requisite experience and top up courses as prescribed by the board, that architecture technologies will be eligible to apply for registration as graduate architect. So it means that those maybe the US graduate who has not got the part 1 or part 2 cleared before, but you have already been in the industry, okay, for certain years, minimum of 2 years, you can apply as the architecture technologies. And after 2 years being the architecture technologies, you can apply to register as graduate architect. So the panel will assess if you have gone through certain courses and training, then the board, the panel may accept you to be registered as graduate architect. So this is basically to bring back all those graduates from unrecognized school to come back to the board, register as graduate architect. So it means that you can now go through the process of practical training for 2 years and can seek for the part 3. Okay, so at the end, the work is in your hand, so you can decide to adopt the technology. And for graduates who come from the unrecognized school, this is an opportunity for you to register as architecture technologies and get yourself upgraded to be the graduate architect and potentially to be the professional architect one day. So thank you very much. So Architect Denta and Chris, I hand over the screen back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Architect Dato' Azumi, for the summary. Yeah, make sure you clear your throat a little bit. I like the way you link from the conventional building methods to the digitization, and then you took the trouble to cover the architectural technologies, which is one of the 5 professions or jobs under the Architects Act 117, and that is covered under Part 5C, special provisions relating to architectural technologies in our Act 117. Thank you very much, Dato'. We shall come back to you later on for Q&A. Okay, Architect Adrenta, would you like to... sorry, Adrian. Rida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rida, would you like to introduce our final panelists for the day?
Okay, thank you, Architect Chris. All right, the fourth and final panelist is none other than Architect Interior Design, Dr. Tan Lokman. He is the Director of Archi Center, DTLM Design Group, and Principal of Dr. Tan Lokman Architects. He's also a LAM Board member with 34 years experience in various fields. We welcome Dr. Tan Lokman.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Doc.
Thanks for the kind invite. I'll go straight into my slides. What a year it's been. I think to many people, they are very glad that it's come to the end of the year. But surprisingly, after we came out of the hard lockdown in June, I think it's been pleasantly better than most people actually expected. It was anticipated to be much worse than this. I'll go straight into some of the scenarios of what the future of the profession is like from LAM's perspective. I think LAM exists because of the Act. If there's no Architects Act, there will not be any LAM or Lembaga Architect. So I believe that professionalism is still the key to what we do. I think if you look at business out there at the moment, you've got pilots who are selling burgers. You've got aircraft engineers who are making roti canai. Everyone has sort of come out of their normal jobs, and they have started to take on things that are quite different. But I think that even as for architects, the key that sets us apart is that we are, first and foremost, we are professionals. So the professional has a certain set of unique skills. He lives by a code of conduct and serves with honesty and integrity. I think these last two words need to come back very strongly. And the board has been, we have been doing a lot of disciplinary cases, complaints that have come in on architects. And we are starting to find that honesty and integrity is something that is being challenged quite widely. And architects are, in many sense, put into a corner, and sometimes they forget that they are supposed to be professional in all their dealings. So I believe that in the future, whatever happens, whatever skill level you have or don't have, professionalism will set us apart from the rest. And that's something that we should continue to build on. There's going to be increased pressure to keep honing our unique skills and experience. And I think that we are coming to a point where today our offices needs to be extremely lean and mean. There's no more room for mediocrity. In every office, I'm sure the bigger office will be more rampant than smaller offices. And even in government, there are some people who can get by with a 9-to-5 job with no particular contribution or skills. I think the days have come where there's no more room for that. And even in our own practices, we start to look back at all our staff and what their skill level is, and we try and find a way to help them to improve, to maybe diversify or to pick up a new skill along the way. There's going to be drastic changes to education, and I think you've already heard it through President Zairul, and training of professionals. I sit as industry advisor in 2 universities and also advise several others. And I look at the challenges before them, where everything has basically gone online. And Malaysian universities will be hard-pressed to challenge international universities, renowned names who are also offering the same courses. But it will be much cheaper today because the students don't have to travel there and live there, so they don't have living expenses. So many who previously could not afford to send their children to those prestigious international schools, today they can actually send them there. And our education system is up for a major revamp. I think we can have a separate discussion on that, and there's a roadmap that LAM has already embarked on to look at what will happen to education and the training of professionals. I believe that COVID-19 brought 2030 technology to 2020. Things that we did not anticipate that we will have until many years later suddenly became right at our doorsteps. We go to certain places, and today they even have face recognition, not just take your temperature, but they actually scan your whole face. And issues of privacy, etc., they are all on the table now. So I believe there's a rise in AI and machinations. So some people have said that the architectural profession is on its last days, that robots and computers and supercomputers will take over our jobs. But I have a brother who's in technology and quite an illustrious guy. And in recent conversations with him, I actually discovered that AI and computers and all this, they cannot do two things, actually three things. One is, of course, things that are associated with compassion, but they also cannot create, and it cannot work in collaboration, which I was very surprised that AI actually is not reached that level where it can have its own creativity and it can work in collaboration. And that's something that I believe that as long as AI progresses on, and as professional architects, human architects, we should continue to build a niche in this area, a specialization in the creative area, as well as in collaboration. So there'll be many new diverse paths for professionals and many new forms of practices. You may take your Part 3 exam, you can only have 2 out of 3 forms of practice. And I think those things will change dramatically. Big is no longer necessarily good. In fact, if you look at what happened at the last ice age, the big dinosaurs all died. And the ones that survive are viruses like COVID and bacteria, amoeba, and the small ones survive. So I think every time there's a dramatic change to the world climate or to the world environment, small things actually survive. So I believe that there will be new forms of practices. We are already starting to see it. And also, together with that, we get a lot of complaints of illegal practices, people purporting to be professionals, but they do not hold any professional qualifications. They have some form of training, they have some body of work, they might have done some amazing designs, they might have built a few great buildings even, but they are not registered professionals. But the complaints are there, and to us, we deem it as illegal practices. But maybe that will change. I don't know. And we got to keep our minds open because everything is changing around us. And specialization and collaboration is going to become more and more prevalent as the way forward. One of the early talks I gave when the MCO first set in was with the interior designers. And I had the experience of being in a panel with 2 other very senior practitioners. And one of them in his sharing said that he's going to shut his office down, and his office is no longer going to be a place that people come to do work. They actually, he's going to convert it into a social club or creative club where the staff comes in and work with other people on ideas, and they present, and they do it over lunch or over tea, and then they all go back home and they work from home. So I thought, wow, that's a very interesting way of looking at things, and that could really actually be the future. If that happens, then what happens to all our office buildings and all the commercial properties that we have built through the years? I think the property market will have again a 2030 to 2020 experience. There'll be a rapid recalibration, and priorities will change. So I'm always an optimist, and people have asked me, is there any hope to continue in the architecture profession, or even worse, I got parents who ask me, is it worth putting my kids through 5 years of education? Is there still going to be an architecture profession at the end? I always believe that there's tons of work for architects. The world population, if you look at it, even in spite of the COVID deaths this year, the population still grows at an enormous rate. It's still increasing. And as long as there's need for shelter and places for people, you always need an architect. Architect, if you refer back to old documents, first time ever mentioned is even in the Bible. Yeah. So people say that we are the second oldest profession, the oldest legal profession. and we are definitely here to stay. I was quite negative earlier on when the MCO first started. I thought that, wow, I've never seen anything like this before. We've been through 3 recessions, and this one is going to really kill us. But we had good SOPs. We had a government that made some pretty good decisions. We had people who obeyed a lot of incredible draconian laws and decisions and directives. And interestingly, when we came out of it in May and June, the building industry was one of the essential services that came out earlier in May. And by June, we were all back in office. And the rest of the year from June to now, we've been exceptionally busy. So I continue to be very optimistic about the future. I believe that next year is going to be a boom time for the property industry. And just upskill, learn new things, pick up new collaborations, meet new partners, become better and better at what you do. And of course, we are also starting to look at communities and cities that are not on Earth. And I'm a big follower of what's happening with SpaceX and things like that. We are definitely not going to let engineers design the new cities in the galaxy. I mean, if you let them do it, they will build roads for cars that don't exist. But we believe that communities and cities and housing will always be the purview of professional architects. Thank you very much. Yeah. Back to you. Yeah, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. That was a very hopeful talk, very right to the point, and gave us a glimpse of the future. Of course, you also brought up the age-old war between architects and engineers. No, just to mention it, the touchy one. But I'm very glad that you gave a far-sighted view of what the profession will be after COVID-19 and how LAM is going to deal with it. Okay, without further ado, I would like to ask Architect Rida to take over. I will invite all the panelists back into the forum and webinar here so that we can take a few questions.
All right. We welcome all the panelists back. Hi, welcome, Dato' Tan Pei Ying. Welcome back.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Architect Rida, would you like to start off with the first question maybe that has been filling up?
All right. So we had a lot of good questions around, and the talk was well curated by all the panelists. So the first question, maybe Chris could be giving to the president.
Yes. Okay. I have one here which is directed at the president, Architect Zairo. It was also mentioned by Dr. Tan earlier on the illegal practices or the non-registered so-called professionals encroaching into architecture, interior design, so on and so forth. So what would be LAM's reaction onto that, especially with these illegal practices advertising rampantly in the social media? President?
Yes, thank you for the good question. I think it's a popular question nowadays, especially in the art time now. So I think this has been over and over again in the media, in whatever means, whether in the electronic means or in many other medias. What is LAM doing about it is, as mentioned just now in my talk, we are now very seriously looking into this matter because we have underlined the SOPs required for us to take action against those involved, especially for those. So we have many cases gathered so far that we are taking action, and we are now seriously looking into batches of cases to put to trial in the near future. So we have aligned the many, especially on the architectural as well as the ID work that's been done by unregistered person. So we have underlined the means, the steps along the way, so that we are now seriously taking action against them. So I think it will be a case to refer at. So I think this can be a warning to also to those intended to follow and to continue doing this illegal practice. So once this is on, I would say it would give a warning to all not to again continually doing such a practice. As mentioned by many of the panelists, we in the book always look at members as professional as they are. They are professional, where they have the other two words behind them, trustworthy as well as integrity, where we can't find in any of those unregistered personnel. So we will show and prove to the members as well as the general public that action will be taken against them. In terms of publishers, publishing or advertising this group of people, we are writing to the publisher to for them to register to get to Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia in order to confirm whether these people are really the professional to do the job. So they need to come back to Lembaga before they need to publish any more in the future. So that's for now, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, President. I think that's a very good answer covering all the areas of this matter. The next question we have is I'd like to ask Dato' Tan Pei Ying. Of course, welcome back to the webinar. Dato', there are a lot of practices, architectural and interior design, that are now facing collection of the fees, right, in the face of COVID-19. What is the avenue that they can look at, especially from LAM's point of view, in settling this issue for the practices? Dato'?
On the practical side, of course, it's the best to go and talk to your client and try to negotiate, understand each other's problem. If you want to go strictly according to your conditions of appointment, of course, there are provisions for you to suspend work and terminate your conditions of contract or appointment. But under the COVID-19 part of the Act, during this particular period, there's also a suspension of your rights. This is a very difficult period for everybody. I mean, it's so unexpected. So the best way to me is a practical approach. Not only with regards to our appointment, but also with regards to the way that you administer the contract. Sit down and talk to each other. Don't go confrontational. Be more proactive. End of the day, be practical about the whole thing, because anybody who get affected and get terminated along the way, it's going to affect the entire value chain. If the contractor dies, the developer will also be affected because there's also obligation to the purchaser under SPA. We are all in it together. So end of the day, I think the best approach will be, at all times be fair, and sit down with your client, try to understand each other's problem and come to a amicable compromise. Okay. In the event you really cannot do it, then only you go based on your conditions of engagement and your rights, which are quite clearly spelled out. But at this moment, under the COVID-19 part 2 of the Act, your rights are also suspended for the time being. And I suspect this COVID-19 Act will be extended as well. So we are not sure until towards the end of the year whether it will be extended. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tan Pei Ying. I think that is a very good response to the query. Rida, before you take on, I have one for Dr. Uzumi. Right. That is from Facebook, from the gym. Wants to ask, how does the scale of minimum fee work with architectural technologies, when they provide the services as compared to architects, right? So, Dr. Uzumi, would you like to look at that? I think they're worried about the collection of fees too.
The scale of minimum fees actually for architecture services, but not for architecture technologies. We do not have a scale of fee for architecture technologies. So go ahead and charge as high as you want, as long as people want your service.
Are you suggesting that we should all be architectural technologies as well?
Yes. Yeah. You can register.
Okay. Rida, thanks,
Yeah.
Dato. Rida, I'd like to ask the next question, perhaps for
All right.
Dr. Tan.
Okay. Yeah. My next question to Dr. Tan is thank you very much, Dr. Tan, for a very simple but very effective points that you put. You put
Thanks.
it right, which is the skill, professionalism, and also a lot of vision for the future. I do like when you mentioned about the idea of the really future office. What do you think about the future of creative hubs, creative collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration between architects for the future practice?
I like to think that we'll be a lot more independent. We'll be a lot more connected up electronically and mechanically. But as the Kuala Lumpur Architecture Festival director for next year, and also ARCHIDEX is a big part of us. I really believe that we cannot give up the opportunity to come together. The networking is still very important. So I go back to highlight what the senior interior designer actually said was, he still opens his office, and those teams that need to come in to collaborate and network, they can come in together. It's like a club, and you have free drinks and food there. And I thought, wow, not a sweatshop like our offices, but a place where you come together and you feel happy. You actually generate ideas. It's like a discussion just like what we are having now, except we're doing it in a virtual room. But I think that offices will continue to require that space for people and that time for people to come together. You cannot build a Tower of Babel if you're all in your little, in your own little capsules. And looking at the creative hubs in US, I think they do get together. That's why Google has a very different office. They don't have permanent desks. They got hot seats. Yeah. So I think that's the future.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Doc. Rida, maybe I'd like to direct this question at all the panelists. Since Doc has said that the way of the future is AI, digital technology, and even Dato' Azumi has mentioned it. Of course, Dato' Peng has pulled us down to reality, and President has set the encompassing duties of the board. So with the future, if we move towards the direction of digitalization, how prepared is LAM for this in terms of practice regulations, so on and so forth, for architecture, interior design, or even architecture technologies and building draftsmen? Anybody like to take the question? How prepared is LAM for this digitization age?
Chris, I think for digitalization, LAM, so far we do not have any specific regulation regulating the practitioner. So, however, I think this is a time that I think for the practitioner, even the graduate architect to explore. This is a time for them to explore what are the opportunities that are available, what are the platforms available for them to go and grab it. I would like to recommend that all our graduate architect, even professional architect, to really look into the future of technology, especially in BIM. I think BIM is going to be the definite way forward in the construction industry. It's just like AutoCAD, how AutoCAD actually marginalized all those manual building draftsmen before.
I think you have to embrace technology. If not, you'll be left behind. Everybody is moving forward. You need to constantly upgrade yourself and embrace technology. If not everybody has gone ahead and you'll be left behind. You become obsolete. So we have to constantly upgrade ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It could be the same, moderators and the panelists. We should look into the education fraternity. So as mentioned earlier in the discussion, assessment has also been done online. So I would say that not just practice, I think the education also has changed. So the way how lectures are done, how assessment or accreditation exercise in the near future will also change. So we have to adapt on the new technology of how do we do assessment, how do we do accreditation in the near future, where we not necessarily be visiting physically on site, when we do accreditation, for instance. So similarly, to do assessment on evaluation on graduates, students and whatnot. So I see technology is very important, where I think board have to take the new initiative in the near future in order to be relevant and compelled to whatever that is happening now.
Right. Thank you, President. Yeah. I think I can conclude by Dr. Uzumi, Dr. Tan Pei Ying, President, and even Dr. Tan, that LAM is well prepared to look into the future of digitization, and this was speeded up due to the COVID-19, where all the working conditions had to change and go online. Right. That's very good. We seem
Yeah,
to
we
have
already
a question
started
down
today.
there.
Yeah, we have a
Yes, that's
question
right.
from participant. He is asking about how to Nur Adlan bin Muhammad, how to warn or charge those practice illegally because the said illegal practice are not registered with LAM. Any panelists would like to answer the question?
Okay, maybe I can answer that. Under our act, if you are illegal practice, actually you are not protected by the law. The client who engage you can say, no, you are not registered, you are not entitled to claim. I think there are already precedent cases, right? It's just that a lot of these clients currently are quite ignorant. If they know, no, they can say, no, I don't have to pay you. I think we have received quite a few complaints from some of these clients, basically claiming that they don't have to pay, which is correct, because they're not entitled to claim any fee at all if they're not registered and they cannot provide the services under the Act. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Tan Pei Ying.
Next
question.
Yeah, there is also provision under the Architects Act that LAM can take action against the imposter if they are not the registered architect, but they are offering the service, pretending that they are architect. LAM can actually take action. Okay,
right.
Prosecute that person.
Okay, thank you, Dato.
All right, Chris.
Rida,
there's a lot of people excited about Dato' Izumi's presentation on technologies.
Yes, it seems to be filling up the whole screen.
Yeah, everything is about that. So,
so I hope we can have more people in the architecture. So far we have only 20 registered, so we need more.
Yeah, I mean, Dato', there's a few questions. One asking about, can architect, AR or graduate architect become technologists? And when will LAM set up ID technologies?
Okay, actually, even if you are a professional architect, if you want to register as architecture technologist, yes, you can. It's not prevent you from becoming the architecture technologist. Okay.
But you can still carry on the work without being registered.
Yes.
Architects are entitled to do the work, right? Just like I do as well. But if you want to have another registration, by all means.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dato. I think the technologies part link up very well with Dr. Uzumi and Dr. Tan's talk today, right? Oh wow, the whole screen is filled up with questions. We can take only a few more because our time is quite up already, Rida. So Rida, maybe you want to take the next one quickly.
The long one?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Question to the President, referring to subsection 33E. Strongly believe that disciplinary committee needs to show their process. I think the Lembaga has actually started a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Doing all this. Yeah.
So basically, I think under disciplinary committee, we have set up SOP clearly now to undertake all the various angle of queries and complaint that we have gathered so far. So I cannot disclose it in detail, the SOPs, but we are very clear of the action that we are taking now, so that we can assure to members that they are being regulated and they should behave themselves to be a professional. So I think that is very, very strictly done now. So we hope the less number of disciplinary cases will be happening now. Will be no more. My battery is running low. I need to charge it up now. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, from the list, yep.
From the list,
Extension
yeah. Okay.
of time, yep.
All right. I think this one is probably to Datuk Tan Pei Ying, yeah.
Tan Pei Ying.
Referring to the clause 23.8, contractors entitled EOT, while clause 24 enable contractor LNE. Do we need to issue AI or just let the contractor claim under force measure? We are contract administrator being fair during pandemic.
Okay, if we really look at the provision of the contract, for any delay, force majeure is one of the relevant events, right? Under 23.1, there's actually procedure for you to follow, right? If you go freely according to the contract, you have to serve notice of delay. Then after that, within certain time frame, you have to submit the particulars. But having said that, like I said, this is an unprecedented pandemic that affects all of us. Our current contract provisions are also not comprehensive now. I would suggest the person who asked the question attend our seminar tomorrow. We are dedicating a lot of time to talk about the contract and what PAM is proposing to the industry to adopt. And some of them are out of the contract provision, but we are saying that at this moment, we should look at the problem a little bit more in a more sympathetic way rather than going strictly according to the contract provisions. And according to the provisions as well, clause 24 does not allow you to claim loss and expense for delay caused by COVID-19, which is under force majeure, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of issues with the contract. So please come and join us tomorrow. We are having a talk in PAM, starting at 9 o'clock. Yeah. And PAM will also be issuing some guides on the recommendation to be suggested to our members there.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Tan Pei Ying. Rida, I think we are very short of time now. What we suggest, perhaps one statement from each panelist before I sum up the webinar. We start with President. What do you think of the future of LAM from here onwards?
Yes, as what been discussed, and I think we have to be very optimistic that we should cater for all the needs of the members. And we have to go on through the new technologies, AI and whatnot, in order to be more relevant and at the same time being accepted by all the people and the members as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, President. Dato' Azumi, one statement from you.
Please, I think LAM would like to hear also from the members, architects, interior designer, architecture technologists. Maybe you can give feedback that how that LAM should also transform to embrace the technology, because I think the feedback from members are very, very important so that we can together whatever we can. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Azumi. Dr. Tan Pei Ying, one last statement from you.
As I have reiterated, we are professionals, right? So professionalism and integrity are very important. So no matter what you do, always remember you must act professionally and you must be fair to all the parties. Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tan Pei Ying. Dr. Tan, something from the future for you?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate again that I think the hallmark of a professional is honesty and integrity. And the profession will evolve and it will continue to change. And I just implore that the laws that we have written over the years need to change to suit the evolution of the profession. We are starting to find that, the COVID law came in very fast and a bit slow, but came in. Almost every other law is almost obsolete in some sense because we have all evolved. We have evolved faster in this last year than we ever evolved throughout our 100 years of history. And I think that our laws need to change to suit the evolution of the profession. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much, Doc. Rida, I will sum it up and you can help me close from here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks like time is up, and for our webinar, I've just been given the heads up by the host that we have overshot a little bit on time. But attendees, do not despair if your question was not aired, as we have an overloaded list of questions streaming in throughout the session. I hope we will be able to carry another session with LAM later on. Time only permits us to address the panelists in a few questions. For those who wish to ask more questions after this webinar, you can write into the LAM website as shown in the running display below the screen. Yeah. Okay. Before Architect Rida and me sign off, we'd like to thank our distinguished panelists, Architect Zairo, Architect Datuk Tan Pei Ing, Architect Datuk Azumi Hazani Ismail, and Architect Dr. Tan, and LAM Secretariat for the invaluable time and effort to be on our webinar today. A big thank you also goes out to our host, our platform host, ARCHIDEX, for hosting this StreamYard platform for our webinar. Most importantly, thank you to all the attendees who has signed in. I think we number close to 130 or 50, and the questions coming in, right? So, Architect Rida, any last words from you?
Just the last word was to all participants and all, stay safe, stay healthy. Kita jaga kita teguh, kita menang, dan selamat Hari Profesional Teknikal Negara 2020.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Panelists will stay for a group shot.
Bye-bye.